Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me in. It's always inspiring and exciting, and sometimes even it opens you up to new ways of thinking when you speak with students or people from other parts of the world, industries. So I'm always excited to do these very quickly and hopefully shortly. I started off by studying industrial design and specializing in product design at the National Institute of Design in India. And after graduating, I worked at Titan, designing primarily watches, and um, and Titan at that point of time in 2005 was also consulting with other industries. So worked on a couple of consulting projects within the Tata Group. It was before India had a huge and booming design consultancy scene. I think one of my first experiences at Titan was actually working with a cross-functional team where design was one of the arms that sort of added value to product development. It really exposed me to how the world and how industry functions because when you're in a design school, you look at design briefs, you create them yourself. And this was the first time we had, or I had the experience of getting a design brief from somebody that was in product marketing and then having to speak with product development to see what was actually possible within the constraints of manufacturing, material availability, R&D, et cetera, et cetera. And that got me really curious and interested in figuring out what does projected sales versus actual sales versus profit margin versus um, availability of certain tonnage of certain metal, like all of this overwhelming amount of information just got me really curious about how does design really deal with this level of information overload while still trying to wade through information that is relevant to actual product design, including consumer research, including what are the most contemporary reasons why you would buy a watch and need to tell time, as fundamental as that versus what was happening in the scene of competition. Because back then, and I'll be honest, I don't know what the design scene is in India because I've been out for a while now. Quite often you would get a watch from a competing brand put on your table, Swatch, Casio, Timex, and you would be told, what do you think about this? What can we do here? So all of this basically got me really interested in the relationship between design and other functions in an organization. And I actually started looking at resources and things that I could learn that would help me navigate working in the industry better. And I came across at that point of time the first design management course in the world. And it was at that point of time in 2005, 7 years old. It was called Strategic Design Management, and it was being taught at the Politecnico di Milano in Italy. And I applied, and I was quite fortunate to actually get a place in the eighth edition of that master's course. I was there for a year and a half, and it was quite an interesting format because it was a couple of days of studies and a couple of days of networking, and actually getting the opportunity on your own to work as a freelancer or work part time in design agencies. And that's where actually my love for networking and love for working with and learning from and collaborating with completely different parts of the design industry sort of grew. I loved. I worked for a few months in an architecture company, um, just doing things. I guess worked in an industrial design consultancy company, worked in a furniture design company, um, including everything from actually drafting to making 3D CADs to actually helping in design research to actually showing up for design fairs. I don't know if some of you know about Salone del Mobile, which is the biggest furniture design exhibition and interior design, and now just a contemporary design exhibition in Milan that happens in April every year. And that was always a great space to also meet and see and find out about what was happening in the world. And in one of these exhibitions, I actually met somebody from Adidas that I did not know were from Adidas. And I was showing a piece of furniture, and they asked me quite interestingly, like, what got you into design, and why Milan and everything. And I remember it was irrelevant at that point of time, but when I was 14 or 15, I bought my first pair of sneakers, and they were Adidas. And I asked my parents, like, what kind of engineering or what kind of computer science, because those were the only two things that I thought I could study at that point of time. Do you need to do to be able to decide what a sneaker looks like? And it basically introduced me to the concept of design, which was fundamentally, till that point of time, an unknown word to me. And I didn't know they were at Adidas, so they got really curious and basically offered me an internship at Adidas based on the work that I had at the exhibition. And that's how I moved into Adidas. And I'll start sharing my screen because I just put a few images together just to explain my journey uh, within Adidas. Is my screen visible? No news is good news, so I'll assume it is. Um, so I
Yes, it is
started at
Satwik.
Great. At Adidas, I basically started off as an accessories designer in 2007, and very quickly, in the first couple of years, started working primarily on football as a space and accessories, which was not just bags, but also hard goods and goalkeeper gloves. And within that, I very quickly evolved into an athlete specific designer. So I would design kits for key athletes that Adidas was sponsoring, designed the kit for Andy Murray, designed kits for David Beckham. And it was always exciting, obviously, because these were great athletes, but also it was quite a humbling experience because their expectations and their needs were quite often so simple and so easy to understand that you could genuinely deliver delight and excitement even to them by creating little details and storage and specific details that were helping them get ready for their event or get ready for a match in a way that helped them by giving them 5 extra minutes. So these were just little things that started getting me interested in because fundamentally it's a bag, but how it is used for football versus tennis versus how certain athletes like to store their rackets, which is almost a routine or a pre-match mantra that is truly important to them, really got me understanding the codes of sports and design and how one is so intrinsically linked to the other. Eventually, I became somebody within Adidas that was truly interested in, but was also seen as the person that was driving relationships and collaborations with athletes. And at that point of time, we were trying to navigate and reintroduce a collaboration we had with Porsche Design, which was a consultancy owned by the Porsche Group. That not only designed the cars, but was also a design consultancy to other industries. And we had this collaboration with them across accessories, footwear, and apparel. So I very quickly moved into taking up the accessories and eventually the women's apparel part of the business, because that was also all at even today, it's very interesting to me to navigate and move between different disciplines within design, because I think creativity to me has always been something that I can never be excited about a bag or just specific shoe or apparel. I just love moving between different parts of design. And Adidas, at least even today, I would say it's been a couple of years since I left, but they always encourage people to navigate between different disciplines and try different things out as long as they add value. I always loved skiing and snowboarding, especially snowboarding. I got into it fairly quickly when I moved to Germany. And I loved how technical and it's sometimes crucial and critical ski and snowboarding apparel can be, because if you're stuck in an avalanche, like along with partners, we worked on ski where that allowed you to get rescued more quickly, more efficiently, including safety mechanisms that allowed you to breathe 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes longer if you were caught under snow and things like that. So all of this was also great learning And it was great learning across many different fields from material innovation. This was the first leather gloves that we designed that were actually bonded to a three-layered fleece that allowed you to have amazing grip, because leather, even today, to us is the best grip material, especially when you're skiing and it's wet. But it was also bonded, and that allowed you to, and this was actually an innovation that Porsche had in its car seats, that they were starting to develop bonded car seat covers. And it was interesting to see how that could be taken into accessories. Within the next few years, I basically also developed my role into a more senior position and eventually became the director of our global accessories offer. And this is where, again, I tried to push myself into a completely different consumer mindset, which was kids, and trying to see how working with a completely different set of brands, in this case, Disney and Lucas, for Star Wars and other Disney properties. Just to give you a quick example, this is what our bags looked like. And then it was this very industry standard of taking assets from movies that are kids' favorites and applying them to accessories to almost reflect your love for a specific franchise or a specific movie. And we started introducing the concept of actually becoming one of the characters, because for children, at that point of time, our research showed role play and immersive. It was just sort of starting, video games were starting to take a different turn where the narratives were more infinite, that they evolved with the game, with the characters. So this entire notion of actually being Ray or being a stormtrooper became something that was slowly starting to pick up its relevance, and that's why we were actually looking at, if Ray had a rucksack while she was on her mission to in Star Wars, what would the rucksack look like? Or, when stormtroopers were training to become stormtroopers, what would their rucksack look like? And of course, these were meant for kids, but the hope was that these bags would almost make them feel like everyday superheroes, and also still showcase their love for their favorite characters, including Elsa. If she was young and was going to school, what would her rucksack look like? Another thing that we started working on was and these are things, my hope is that what I'm trying to tell you is that these are things that at that point of time were really relevant. And this might be standard practice now, but these were some of the things that were delightful and interesting and encouraging when I was at that point of time, to see how true audience and consumer behavior started actually affecting product design. Eventually, within Adidas, I moved into a collaborations design director role, where I was looking over the entire portfolio of women's collaborations. It became really interesting for me, also as a challenge, but also for my own creative growth. Adidas, even today, primarily is known as a men's football brand, and then collaborations for men, and then maybe a few things for women and kids. So it was interesting to see, how do we take collaborations, how do we take sports for women and the female audience, and truly carve out a space that is meaningful, that isn't necessarily pink and purple, but is also truly recognizing and creating products and experiences that live up to their expectations of being athletes, of being fit, of being of overall well-being. So this was a great time to actually go into a space that wasn't very busy, at least within Adidas, to try and create a language, to redefine some of the existing language, to truly show up as a visual that was empowering, but still feminine without being apologetic. And this is some of the work we did with Stella McCartney, who's a fashion designer from the UK, and Adidas had a long-standing collaboration with them. But in 2018, we redefined the visual language. So the intention was to go from feminine to almost these everyday superheroes. We started actually within Adidas trend, where we weren't looking at existing human personalities. We wanted to create almost a bionic woman who would be an inspiration. Sustainability, which was already a contemporary theme since 2005, 6, was the main intention. Also for Stella, who's a big uh, activist herself, but is always keen on making sure that everything she does has a sustainability undertone. And this is also where, within contemporary society, the expectation was shifting from talking about sustainability to sustainability becoming a hygiene factor. Like if you go to a supermarket right now and buy literally anything from a dishwashing liquid to a shower gel, you'll see it'll have some messaging on it saying that the packaging is made out of 100% recycled plastic, etc. So this was becoming also an expectation. So how do you then sort of lift up from that crowded space and truly still say authentic stories? And this was great learning for me to look at sustainability not as a message, but as an expectation. So the message and the visual identity of the design work that we were doing had to still look almost non-sustainable. So we were looking at developing, and we did manage to create like a foil jacket that had thermal properties, but was 100% recycled foil. We were looking at jackets that were completely made out of nylon that was reclaimed from ocean plastic. So it actually had even a positive impact on the environment. So this was a great learning for me to also see sustainability becoming a contemporary design tool without necessarily or even absolutely not looking like a quote unquote recycled or a sustainable visual language. Some of the work that is quite interesting in the last couple of years, especially because of COVID, was to really see what does wellness and fitness mean. And again, as I was speaking, this became really interesting to me, really marketing to, but also designing for the female athlete or the female wellness enthusiast. And as the world really shifted to people spending more time indoors, social media took a really important place. Training using social media, there were 9-minute TikTok videos where you could do an entire workout routine. There's been a lot of evolution, especially through brands like Peloton that have created online experiences that are interactive, but also allow you to tailor make your own fitness routine. But on the other hand, the lines between, and this is interesting to me as a creative, but also to brands to really carve out and own specific spaces, the line between sports and fashion over the last 10 years have blurred. Adidas has done a lot of collaborations where you can't really say if a sneaker is for running or if it is for pairing up with jeans and t-shirt and just hanging out, to actually wearing it on the red carpet. So this was a point of time also in my career where I was even more excited about blurring lines and boundaries between things that were quite often separated: sports, fashion, lifestyle, and how for a consumer there was hardly any distinguished difference between them. So this became an interesting way of creating ranges and products that truly lived up to the brief of shining and showing up on social media to create almost a counterculture where influencers were creating a culture around sports which wasn't necessarily informed. They were using products and apparel that wasn't necessarily the best for that kind of fitness, but what it did do was make them look good, and making them look good made them feel good about themselves, and which is what quite often fitness is. It's about feeling good about your body and your mind, that it's in a place of balance, and you want to get in so many ways recognition, but also show off if you feel like you're looking good. And that's happening across all genders. It's not something necessarily for women. So this was an interesting time. This was in the COVID years, and we also figured out that for authenticity, we also needed to work with a brand that was creating truly unique, feminine, unapologetically sexy apparel that allowed women to feel super strong about who they were. We worked with a brand called Wolford from Austria. And what we've tried to do is to create that visual appeal using the codes that Wolford had. It was an amazing exercise to look into what was the Adidas DNA. And we do have a very strong DNA when it comes to footwear because we have midsoles and toolings and materials. And of course, there's the logo and the branding using three stripes. But what are the textures? What are the finishes? What are the materials? What codes do they represent? What represents movement? What represents freedom? What represents stability? And how do we build those codes into an unexpected visual identity using garments, and how do we cross reference them to still make it look strong, sexy, wearable, but ultimately highly functional, and really allows you to blend your entire, as we figured out, people were spending their entire days and evenings and months at home. How do we create a garment using materials that allow you to breathe, allow you to stretch, allow you to function almost seamlessly, second to skin feeling? But this was an interesting exercise to really evolve the existing Adidas visual language into something that was quite unexpected and not Adidas. So these were some of the explorations that the team did. And we worked very closely with Wolford to see what their visual DNA was and how do we sort of combine them. And we started seeing some correlation using textures and meshes and these bands that are meant to allow for more stability and for more stretch. And that was quite exciting to then create looks and outfits that truly then helped us create a visual language that we could own. Still quite out there. And this was for us almost like the show car of our garments that we created limited quantities of. We made sure that it was only available through certain channels where they could establish. But again, something that you could seamlessly move from doing yoga to going out and getting a coffee to even then going out and having a great time with your friends at a bar in the night. Because fitness became such a huge part of everybody's lives, we also wanted to make sure Adidas and women's apparel could be a part of the entire experience. And finally, this is where I am right now. I think what happened also during the pandemic years was it was just a gloomy, tough time, I guess, for everybody in many different ways. But it also made me reflect on where I was in my journey as a creative. And it felt like that one little experience I had leading the kids' accessories for Adidas was it was a consumer group. It was a mindset that I didn't have a lot of exposure to. So it was something I definitely wanted to add to my portfolio, really working on kids' products. On the other hand, I felt like the world needed more fun and more humor and more joy because everybody was going through a tough time. It to me almost became a design differentiation that how can you build in fun into your existing DNA, into your existing coding, and how can that make a more unique and a more interesting proposition to the consumers and on almost a differentiator between choosing a jacket or a t-shirt that is truly functional and really speaks that language versus a more fun and a more humorous, joyful version of it. I joined Lego. It was amazing to be able to get this opportunity. I sit on a portfolio which basically extends the Lego brand outside of its own property, which is primarily brick, by creating expressions that allow for new consumers to still love and cherish their relationship with Lego, but through different uh, expressions. So we've done these, for example, these storage boxes. It also really roots back to the history of Lego, which started as a furniture and a roofing company in the late 30s and then eventually became a construction brick toy. So really looking at wood again as a material that the brand started with, but a contemporary and a very Scandinavian take on what Lego bricks could be, but almost like these desktop storage units. We also looked at some of the iconic properties that Lego has, and that's the minifig. But how do we create something that is almost a different canvas for people to explore their creativity? There are people that have taken this wooden minifig and drawn on it. They've built entire worlds around it. So this was just another way to extend the love for this brand through a completely different proposition. I also sit on a portfolio where we collaborate with external brands. We've done collaborations with Adidas, with Levi's, with IKEA, and we continue to do more collaborations. And the intent here is to actually look at other spaces where consumers look for validation or identity and how we can bring play and fun into them. As I was saying, everybody in the world is looking at fun and play as a way of including families, including children, into a more creative and into a more positive future. And this is a collaboration we did with Target, which is a retailer based in the US. we wanted to focus on families and holidays as a means of celebrating together in a fun, in an inclusive, and in a playful way, but still keeping the Lego DNA, our colors, our elements, our visual identity, but making sure that it was for everybody. And it was something that really allowed you to include your dog if you think they are a part of your family, and your kids, and through different expressions and experiences. And another part of the portfolio that I sit on is actually brick-based toys that we create exclusively for Lego retail stores. So these wouldn't be available, let's say, on Amazon or on I don't know, in Toys R Us, etc. And here the intention is to create extensions to the play values that are exclusive, that tell a story, that actually spark a joy for building with brick again for adults. Or if you're a huge Disney fan, it sparks an interest for building with bricks through a means that allows you to still showcase your love for Disney, but also to create and make sure that there is representation in the brand, that everybody that walks into a Lego store feels like there is something that they can walk out with, own, make a version of, see themselves in. And these are quite contemporary but quite important areas that of course Lego, but any brand wants to make sure that they take a side. I think it's a very non-binary world right now. It's not necessarily right or wrong, but you need to make sure that these are contemporary topics that consumers are engaging in, and you have a conversation piece that you choose and you agree that you can stand by and make a difference. That was a lot of talking. I apologize, but yeah, this is where I am right now.